Hi, students. I'm Mr. Rodriguez, and I am your graphic communications instructor. And I don't want to get too far in the weeds with the design aspects of this project. My main focus and goal here is to talk about printing, specifically screen printing. But I think a little bit of background information would probably help. So here is where we're at. I created this design using this. This is a photo I took at where was it? Finger Lakes in New York. And you can see I pulled that into our graphic design piece here with the waterfalls, etc. I wanted to also show a photo of my daughter. This is what I took and made this silhouette picture, silhouette vector in Adobe Illustrator. And I took that vector and then brought it back into Adobe Photoshop and brought it in this little vector image part there. We are going to be working with a raster file. I want to be clear about that. I did just think that the black silhouette needed to have these real nice crisp edges. And so I did create that in Adobe Illustrator and then brought it across to Adobe Photoshop to create the raster image that we need here. So the background info on the design stuff is kind of complete. Obviously, I have some layers here where I manipulated and brought in some effects on the photograph in the back. I brought in the shapes, etc., the text. At this point, the design is completed. And now what we want to do is we want to prepare this design, this file for printing of transparencies. So the first thing to do is to save this out. So we want to do a file, save as. And yeah, most of the time saving to the cloud works just fine, especially when you're working on multiple devices, maybe a laptop at home, a desktop in the classroom, or something like that. In this scenario where we're actually we're printing, we're trying to export this up, print this out to an Epson P5000 here in the classroom with me. It's best to put it right onto my computer. So I'm going to save this and save it to my desktop right now just for printing purposes. We're going to create a file called Screen Print Demo 2 TIFF. It's important that this is not a Photoshop file, but a TIFF file. The tagged image file format is one of the best ways to print a raster file. And so we'll work with that kind of file here onto my desktop, save, and I'm going to replace it because I've done this once before. We're not really worried about image compression, any of this other stuff over here. There is one button that you are going to need to click. You will have to click the Save Transparency button. Yes, it will give you this dialog. Many programs do not support transparency and TIFF, blah, blah, blah. We already know this, and yes, we are aware, but it will work just fine if we do this. Yes, do that. Hit OK. And now our design is on our desktop, and we're going to switch from Photoshop to our printing software, the Separation Studio and XT. Now, I want you to be aware, we have the AccuRip Emerald software running in the background. That will be something that we're going to use, but what we need is this Separation Studio software first to prepare the file, and then the Emerald actually works as the RIP, the raster image processor that allows us to actually create the halftone dots in the end. So open, and we're going to grab it off of our desktop as the TIFF file here, and open, and it should pop open real nice and easy. Look at that, beautiful. Okay, a couple of things. Here's the window that shows us what we're doing. Underneath that, in this little film strip here, this shows you each of the colors that are currently in the design that we're trying to make. Just realize each one of these colors equals one screen on the printing press. We only have room for 6 screens on our press, so we need to reduce this here. I also want to bring your attention over here where we're looking at textiles. This will tell us a little bit about the color of the shirt that we're printing on. These are the inks that we're going to use, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are the active separations which match these down here. I want you to notice that some of these don't really have anything in them. So this red, there's nothing there. It's not going to produce any kind of value to us. So really, like, we can remove this. What I like to do is I like to multiply them. There's also a separation merge up here. We can merge the gray, the purple, and the turquoise. We could do that. I like to multiply them. I like to put them together just in case there is a tiny little bit of info there. I want to collect that. So I'm going to merge the purple with the gold, multiply that. The red and the gold, I'm going to multiply together. The blue and the green, I'm going to multiply those. And the turquoise and the green, multiply those. We did lose a little bit of tonality by doing that, but we are going to boost that up in just a minute. Before we boost that up, we do need a black. So to get the black, we're going to click on base and nope, I lied. Don't click on base. Click on black generation. We want a detailed generation, and we want to select the exact same TIFF file that we had before. Open that, and it'll produce this. This just looks like black, right? Just looks black. There's nothing there. Well, that's just because we're on a black textile. If we switch our textile to white, you'll see this is what it looks like in black. Okay. So here's what our final print looks like so far with on a white t-shirt. If we had a white shirt or textile, right? That's what this would look like. So I think the tones of the color are a little off. I'm going to click this auto adjust button a couple of times. I think 3 would do it, maybe 2. We're going to undo that last one. 2 should do it. And that should give us the results that we want. So now we have a base, which is a solid white underbase. We have a black. We have a gold that'll print like this. We have a green that'll look like that. And we have a gray that'll look like that. And then also another white. You can't really see anything there, but that'll work. Okay, at this point, we are ready to put it onto the press. So press fit this. Notice the base white automatically starts on 1. Typical way to do this would be to do the 3 colors next. And then, so I'm going to go yellow, green, gray, and then the highlight white, and then the black. Now, we might flip-flop those on the press later. We'll have to see how it looks. We'll see. And hit apply. And notice it reorders all of our images down here. And we should be ready to rock and roll. Go ahead and hit the print button here. This shows each of our separations here in this window. Notice separation 1 is our base. Separation 2 is our gold. 3 is our green. 4 is our gray. 5 is our white. And 6 is the black. I want you to notice the marks and layout button here. I have this preset for you because I have specific marks that I want you to have on your page. We have this registration mark here. The mark weight needs to be somewhere between 1 and 2. I like to do about 1.5. It's thick enough that you can really see it and you're able to use it on the press, but it's not too thick where it's just a little bit out of proportion to other things. I choose to use this layout here because I like the 4 registrations, 1 in each corner, plus the 1 mark down the middle to help guide us there. We also have a label here. The label is here. Notice it's right there, screen. That helps us keep each color organized, especially when you're working and the transparencies are all black and white and you can barely tell what they are. It's nice to have a label to help guide us in this area. Good, that looks great. Don't scale anything. Don't click anything else. This should be exactly what we want. We're gonna print all 6 separations. And yeah, this is gonna be great. I'll hit print on this and then we'll check it out at the Epson printer next. Oh, here's our, so after I hit print on that, I forgot about this. We have to get into the AccuRip Emerald. So yeah, so once we hit print on the Separation Studio software, it automatically kicks it into our RIP software, the AccuRip Emerald. RIP is Raster Image Processor. Notice I have it preset. I have it preset to run on that Epson P5000. We're gonna do a high quality on our roll feed. So it has a big roll on the back with the correct material, the transparency plastic. It's a 17-inch roll on 100 foot. We wanna make sure that it nests and we wanna make sure that it has the enhanced accuracy on both sides. That's these little lines that it prints here. This is perfect. Again, we can look through here and see all these proofs. They look good. When we click print here, it's going to kick us to one more dialog. Here, it's confirming the P5000. It's confirming the paper size. One thing we want to take a look at, we want to click on Layout, Printer Settings, and make sure that it says Roll, Borderless, Auto Expand, and we want to change this from Premium Luster to Premium Glossy 250. The Glossy 250 matches the glossiness of the clear plastic. Now go ahead and hit print, and we'll see you at the Epson printer next. The first print is going through here. right now you can see what that first print looks like. Like that. So this is our number one base, and you can see the silhouette there, the halftone dots that you can see. And we'll look at those a little closer in just a minute. Okay, so we have one done. We have 6 total to do. So we'll let this printer run the other 5 prints. Okay, so here you can see we have all 6 of our transparency pages off the P5000. And you can see that each one of these, so this is our base 1, and there's our base 2, or I'm sorry, our gold, which is number 2. Here's our green, here's our gray, here's our white, and here's our black. Now, if you notice and you look closely, and this light table allows us to do this, we can look closely with our loupe. We should be able to see tiny little halftone dots everywhere. Those dots are going to blend together when we put the ink on. So each one separately doesn't look like much, but when they're all stacked together, it'll make the full image in full color. So that's the next step. And here's what those halftone dots should look like through the loupe. Okay, so now we are in the dark room. We have our transparency pages, and we have our screen. The screen is why we're in the dark room. So the screen has an emulsion on it. This is a light-sensitive emulsion, and the red lights reduce the amount of exposure the emulsion gets. Therefore, it lasts a little bit longer. If we took it out in the white lights, it would get exposed pretty quickly, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And since we're in the red lights, I have about 15 to 20 minutes to work on this before the emulsion becomes ruined. So I want to take my transparency pages here. And so this is transparency page number 1. This is our white base. We want to take this and we want to flip it so it's face down on the outside of the screen. When I talk about working with screens, and I went over this in the intro class, but I'll go over it again. This would be the inside of the screen over here. This is the side, the top, the side, the bottom is flat. And then the outside of the screen is this side here. So we want the outside of the screen face up, and we want to put the transparency page that we created face down. So like this. It's important here that the center of our marks is in the middle of the screen. So I have a center mark here, and they're approximately centered on the screen here. We want to take our T-square. If you've never used a T-square before, this T-square allows us to make a perfectly 90-degree angle. Using that at the bottom of the screen allows us to make a perfectly straight design. So I'm using my center mark here, and I know that's hard to see because it's dark in here. So I'm using those marks here and here to make it perfectly straight. And once I have that done, I also want to make sure that my design is right And so this top mark starts right at the 18-inch mark. And that's important for working on the press later. So I'm just double checking my marks here and here. And then I'm taking some masking tape and doing 4 small pieces of masking tape here and taping down the corners, all 4 corners without moving anything. And this tape won't need to last very long, so I'm not going crazy, taping it down crazy. Double check. That looks good. Perfect. Good. Now I need to repeat this for the other 5 transparencies I have here. And I'll do that quickly here in just a minute. Okay, once I have all transparencies taped onto screens like this, now I'm working at the exposure unit. I'm still in the darkroom, and here is an exposure unit that has 5 lights that shine up, and this is on a glass. This is a glass piece here, and this has a black neoprene fabric over the top. The idea here is that we will shine light. We'll shine light onto the emulsion, and anywhere where the light hits on the emulsion, it'll bake it and make it solidified. Anywhere where we have black, it'll act kind of like sunblock and block those spaces out so that they aren't exposed to light. And then those spots, because this is a water-soluble material, those spots will rinse away, and the baked-on spaces will stay, which will create the negative that we're trying to create. Here, we want to go outside of the screen, face down. It's really important that we center this on the glass here. Center it from front to back. Center it from left to right, this way. And then we have some bleeder tubes here. We want to use this bleeder tube here and here. I also have some hot pads that help protect the neoprene fabric from getting torn. These metal edges here and here are pretty sharp, and so I just want to protect them from being torn over time. Bring this down, clip it in, and start the vacuum. This vacuum will remove the air from in here through this hose here. So it'll blow the air out here. The idea is that it's going to suction this down really tight to make it so that there's no reflective light bouncing back onto that screen. Give it just a second to tighten up. If you notice, you can see how tight it's getting. You can see those bleeder tubes here. You can see the hot pads that I put on. That's when you know it's tight enough. We'll set this dial to 2 minutes. And then we'll hit the start button here, which you'll notice when I do that, the lights turn on. They're exposing that emulsion, hardening the emulsion, basically baking it on, and all the spots where the black is not covered. We'll let this run for 2 minutes, and then we'll repeat it for all the screens that we need to create. Shut off the vacuum, release the clamps here, and release this out. Remove this out of here. And now it's important that we peel off the tape and the negative, or and the positive transparency tape. We can leave this here. And next, we'll go to the washout booth. So here we are still in the darkroom. We have our screens off the exposure unit. We want to get this into the spray out booth. So the spray out booth, we want the outside of the screen facing us. We'll set it in like this. Light on here and water on here. And we have our power washer down here. Press the on button. Our power washer should be, the pressure should be up on the power washer. And now what we want to do is we want to wear the goggles here Always wear the goggles for safety. And we do want to soak the outside of the screen. And now that should soak for about 30 seconds. And let that, while you're letting that soak, we do want to make sure that we're not getting too close when we're spraying this out. We want to spray it out at about 8 to 10 inches away from the screen. And we want to make sure that that there's constant motion, so we're not just blasting in one spot. So here, let's finish this off here. Notice I was careful to spray out all 4 registration marks here, 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 and here. I also sprayed out the label here and both center marks here, as well as the image in the middle here. So that looks really good. I'm happy with the results here. And so now I want to squeegee this off. So I have a squeegee here, squeegee the front of the screen, here, and here. And then let it drip off to the side just for a second here, like this. And then we want to set it to dry in the darkroom, in the complete darkroom here, with the fan blowing on it. So this is completely dark, so you can't actually see in here. Get it in here. And now that's ready to dry. And we will repeat for the next 5 screens. Okay, we're out of the darkroom and we have our screen. So here's our first screen. You guys can see the image there that we're going to use. So the next step, now that we're out of the darkroom, everything's dry, the next step is to tape everything up. So what we want to do is we want to create a frame around the edges. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid letting any ink, when we're pushing the ink through the stencil, we don't want any ink going off and through this edge here. We only want ink going through in the spots that we sprayed out, and everywhere else we want to block it off. So we have the split tape here. The split tape is really sticky on the white side and only kind of sticky on the blue. So what we want to do is we want to tear this out using the frame as a measuring stick here, like this. And then we want to tear this off like this. Now that basically fits perfectly inside of here. On the top and the bottom of the inside of our frame, we want to roll it up. So what I do is I fold this in half like this, put it right at the top, and roll it up. Now, it's very important here that we don't have a lot of wrinkles or creases in the tape, especially on the edges here and on the bottom edges. I'll repeat that process for the bottom. We do want the white part or sticky part to be on the inside of the frame and the blue part to be on the outside of the frame. And I want to show you something. Look at how we have a gap here between where our tape is and where the green emulsion starts. We want to put a second piece on there to cover that gap. And this second piece I'm just going to do flat. Like that. See how that worked? Just overlap them. We also want to do flat on both sides. White side on the inside. Make sure you're not covering any of your design. There we go. So you can see we have it all framed in. That looks great. I see my marks here and here. did kind of cover that markup. I have to open it. I want to make sure I can get to my registration marks there. Okay, so perfect. Repeat this with all 6 frames, and then we'll bring them out to the press. I'm going to do that, and I'll see you back out on the press in just a minute. Okay, this should look pretty familiar from Graphics 1. A couple of slight differences. Instead of having just a single transparency, I now have my whole host of 6 different transparencies here, ready to be loaded onto the press. So this is our screen printing press. This is a 6-color press. If you notice, the top portion of this has 6 locations for screens to be loaded on. This is a 4-station, meaning it has 4 platens where shirts can be loaded. What I've done so far is I brought my first transparency out and lined it up down the middle of this platen. So the design is down the middle of the platen. I taped it down with masking tape on the 4 corners so it doesn't move. I'll then take my first screen that matches that transparency page. It's important that this is being loaded into the press with the inside of the screen face up, outside of the screen face down. It loads into this portion here. What I want to do is slide it into the side clamps. I'm going to loosen those up just a little, and I'm going to slide this in. When I bring this down, should get close to matching up to the screen. I have some wiggle room to adjust it until I get it to match up. The goal here is to match them perfectly. The best way to do that is to use those registration marks that we talked about earlier so that they match perfectly. If you can get all 4 registration marks to match up, then that would mean that this is perfectly aligned and ready to be printed. So let's go ahead and take a minute and do that. And it's a little bit of a tedious process. And I will tell you that when I get close, which I am right there, what I'll do is I'll tighten down these clamps so it really doesn't move much. I'm very close here. And what I want to do is I want to loosen these top clamps. I'll try to do it from this other side. Loosen here and adjust these adjusters. These are called skew adjustments, and basically they move the screen like this in small increments. Micro adjusters is what they're called. And so I just want to move them just a little bit at a time. That's pretty darn close right there. Oh yeah, looks really good. So the first one's done. Let's tighten this down, and that's going to be a perfect print. Make sure all clamps and locking mechanisms are locked, perfectly lined up. And now I do the next one, and I need to do that for all 6. So I'll bring this up and make the next adjustment. So I want to grab the screen that corresponds and match it up like I did the last one. I'll do this with all 6, and then at that point, I'll come back online with you and show you the printing, the actual printing of the image. See you then. Okay, everyone. At this point, I have aligned all my screens to my transparency pages. I have prepared all the inks that I need. If you notice, I have a white here, I have my gray, I have my green, my gold, my second white, and I'm about to load the black ink onto this final screen. Notice I have a squeegee at each station. Each station has its own squeegee in preparation for printing. So the black, here we go. So I just wanted to show you how I brought the ink in for each one of these. I have ink buckets back here. I have my spatula here. I am going to get a scoop of black out of the bucket. And so I have a scoop of black on the spatula, and I just spread it across that space, trying not to get it all over the place. The ink is notorious for getting everywhere This is an oil-based ink. The oil-based inks never dry, and they continue to smear. So we have heaters back there and here that are used for curing the ink. Curing the ink is how the ink changes from being kind of a liquid and into a solid form where they no longer smear. To cure the ink, they have to get heated up. The ink has to get heated up to at least 300 degrees Fahrenheit. That heater over there is at 900 degrees, and we'll feed our shirts through there, and they'll heat up in about 15 to 20 seconds. They'll heat up to 300 degrees, which will cure the ink onto the surface of the shirt, and then they'll be ready to go through the wash or whatever. Let's see. So now that we have our black ink on, we are ready to do our first test print. So I want to go through a couple of things with you guys to make sure that we're all on the same page. Let's do that. So this is a Pellon, a cotton Pellon. It's a small fabric square that is meant to kind of mimic a cotton t-shirt. I'm going to bring this button over. I think we'll use this one for printing here. I always try to put the cotton Pellon across the top here because that's going to mimic the location of the shirt on this button. And I am going to check the height of this. 7.5 inches good. So we do want to adjust this about half an inch. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure that this button matches that button because that's the button that I use to make all my measurements for the 3 things that we need to do before we start printing, right? Centered down the middle, 3 fingers from the top or 3 inches from the top of this, and then also the off contact, which is about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch off of the button. All 3 of those things have been accomplished here. And so now we're ready to make our first print. So this is a wet on wet blended print. So we're going to start with screen number 1. This is our white base. So we're going to bring down the button. When we make our print, it's important that we use the squeegee at the correct angle. So, if you notice, when the squeegee is standing straight up like this, that's a 90-degree angle from the screen up to the top of this squeegee. But we really want to be not at 90 degrees, but more like 65 degrees. So if I took this and took it in half, that would be 45. We want to be a little bit higher up than that, somewhere right around there, about 65. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the edge. So this rubber part of the squeegee is squared off, and we want just the edge of that squeegee to be touching the screen when we print. There are 2 things that we need to accomplish. One, we need to flood the screen, and my rule of thumb is to do a single flood. So I always say 1 flood, 2 prints. So what does that mean? Well, that means that I'm going to flood. I'm going to bring the squeegee down to that 65-degree angle. I'm going to flood the ink over top of the entire screen without pressing any ink through. So just lightly coating it. Like that. That's a nice flood. Now I want to print through. And typically I do 2 prints. Straight through. And then a second print without flooding again. So that was 1 flood, 2 prints. You can see the result of that first print. Pretty good. We'll bring our mold over. We'll repeat that same process. Put this down. 1 flood, 2 prints. You can see how those colors are already starting to blend here. The green. Keeping that 65-degree angle is imperative here. On top of that. interesting. Wondering if we shouldn't use the black color. I was thinking that the black would mimic a navy, but maybe not. Nice. It's turned out pretty good. The greens aren't super strong. I wonder if we need to print that gray before we print the green and the yellow. So that gray, then the green, then the yellow. Pretty nice for the first time. Okay, everything's aligned. Now, what we need to do is we need to do some taping. I need to tape up all these little marks here. So all the registration marks, these little line things, these lines here. I'm going to tape those up. It's going to take me 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'll do another, hopefully a final draft. Okay, I've taped up all the markings and a couple of pinholes that I found, and I want to do a final draft here. So we want to start with our white. So we want to start with our base white here, and this time I am going to print it on a white fabric, cotton pellon. I just think it looks a little bit better with that. And when I do a shirt here in a minute, I'm going to try it on both a navy and on a gray. We'll see how they turn out. So we're going to bring this down. We're going to keep our squeegee angle at that 65-degree angle. Create the flood, make the print. Keeping that squeegee angle at 65 degrees. We're going to do the white. And then I am going to go a little out of order here. I think it's going to work better if I do the gray. Here. Just a single nice little thin gray print. It's going to create some of the rock tones that we need. And then from the gray, we're going to go green and yellow. Beautiful final print. Yeah, love it. Pull this up like that. This comes up and has to go on the conveyor belt heater here. One thing you'll notice with a print like this is those half-tone dots are blending together. When this comes out, I'll show it up close to the camera. So it's important that these half-tone dots that we looked through on the loop over there, that's what's showing up here. And they're blending together. Those dots are blended together, and our eyes naturally make those combine into a single color or blended color or shades or values, etc. So I do wish the details in this were a little bit stronger. I think it got a little bit muddy in here. But the waterfall in the middle here is still visible. It's kind of cool. It's interesting, at least to me. So, yeah, that covers it. That's the whole process. Let's get a shirt now. I think our best result came from our gray shirt. That's what we had planned from the beginning, so I think that turned out the best. You can read the text the best, and I think the print turned out the best up top.